Welcome to the Pastor Study here on Smooth 88.1 WHOV, iHeartRadio, and right here, y'all, on Facebook Live. And yo, for the first time since Tupac and Biggie was still alive, we got everybody here at the same time on the show. We got everybody. We got the full band that is here today. We got Commonwealth Attorney Pastor Law Anton Bell is here. We got Bishop Ray Johnson. We got Dr. Alvin Lyons, Doctor. We got Delegate Marcia Price, and we got producer extraordinaire Jason Covington. We got everybody, the full complement of the show. You know, we've been hitting and missing for a while, but everybody's here. So hello, everybody, and glad that y'all are here today. And, you know, we're going to go ahead and jump in. I'm going to start with you, Sia, because I know something happened this past week that was historic in nature. And certainly we got to give a shout out. We've said before that the most disrespected person in America is the Black woman. And so, but this past week, Ketanji Brown Jackson was officially nominated to the Supreme Court. So we thank God for that. And so what are your thoughts, Marcia, on the nomination?
All of that. Her nomination, historic. Her confirmation, historic. Her confirmation was historic as it was announced by the first Black woman to serve as vice president of these here United States. She was the most qualified, and I would say the most poised in undergoing exactly what you said. The amount of disrespect that was thrown at her and her qualifications, I'm just going to go on and say it was all out lies. To try to make her into some sort of person that's sympathetic to pedophiles because she was following Congress's range for these sentences that she put down, she held it together. And the one sign of emotion other than confidence was when Senator Cory Booker stood up for Black women, for Blackness, for Black joy, for all of that as an ally. And she cried that tear because I know she had to have been feeling all of the weight of all of the Black women that went before her, the Black women of us that are coming, you know, after her, her daughter, all of that. Historic. But I do want to just remind folks, this is not just important because she's a woman, because she's Black. She also served as a public defender and is the first public defender to serve on the United States Supreme Court, which brings an entirely new perspective to it. So I'm still celebrating because it's still amazing. And I think this is going to be an amazing moment for the country to have to, again, reckon with, why were they so racist? Why were they so mean? And she had nothing but receipts.
Yeah. Dr. Alvin Lyons, Doctor, what was your thought on this nomination?
So I was holding my breath the entire time, you know, because where we are in our nation now when it comes to these votes is so unbelievably it's the polarization of a non-political position is unbelievable to me. You know, what we're supposed to be doing, looking for impartial representation in our Supreme Court, and the way that folks are dragged quite literally and emotionally inside of this process is so far beyond what it used to be. It wasn't but so many years ago that you had, you know, Democrats and Republicans, and not in some small margin of 2 or 3, you know, 20 plus individuals that were voting for nominees of the other party because it was more about the actual qualifications and less about the running to our sides. And no matter what this individual did, I mean, they could be the second coming of Jesus Christ, and it would not even matter, because if the other side brought them to bear, suddenly there's something, you know, insufficient about them. So, I mean, I'm very deeply bothered by the process while simultaneously rejoicing for the final outcome. I will say one other tiny thing that we will, you know, examine further on in this. But the moment that really got me was the pause. It was for all of us women of color who have had to navigate spaces where we were deserving of the space that we were at, and somehow we had to justify our existence practically, and to swallow fire inside of a moment so that you don't give anyone material to categorize you as the angry Black woman, I understood that pause like someone would hear a scream. And that moment for me was the moment that I felt like we were all inside of the room, because every one of us has had that moment professionally. So I rejoice with her. I rejoice for America, not just Black women. I rejoice for America because it is a reflection of who we're supposed to be. And I'm excited for what is possible, but I hope we can somehow recover from the way that we have turned this stuff so disgustingly political.
Yeah, so before I get to the fellas, let me ask you both. The last couple of weeks we've been talking about Will Smith and how it felt like Will was representing all of us, right? This moment that for Black people at the Oscars, and all of us, somehow felt a part of that experience. Do you feel the same here with Ketanji Brown Jackson, that she is representative of all of us, much like in the same way former President Barack Obama, much like Kamala Harris is? Do you feel that she is representative of all Black people, all sisters in particular, as she takes this nomination? See, I'll start with you.
I'm going to continue on my train of thought from last time. I think that's a dangerous paradigm to continue. I understand it. And I will say, I look up to her. I look up to what she has accomplished. I look up to the amount of good that she's done, the fact that she didn't have to get ready because she stayed ready, all of that. But I think when we idolize and just kind of uphold this pedestal for people that are in positions of power, the moment that they're human or make a mistake, then we try to cancel them. And so I just want to take this as a moment to say we can accomplish a lot. We can celebrate the accomplishments, but still need to continue, focus on doing the work. So while I am proud and I am excited about what she will bring to the bench, I just don't want to set someone up to be a celebrity in a sense of the pressure is on. And now, because all Black women identify with her, now every time she opens her mouth, she's speaking for all Black women. If she makes a mistake, it's all Black women. And so I think there's a dichotomy there within that. I don't know. That seems like a setup.
No, that's not said. That's fair, right? And Alvin, I'm going to ask you the same question. Do we feel like because she's the first that, and we've talked about this the last couple of weeks, that being the first in our community means essentially the first person represents all of us, right? Because there's so few spaces that we enter into. Do you feel that that's the case here with her?
So what's interesting is that I feel Sia on her point, in the sense that the way that I know that everything is not held inside of it for every single woman is that had she been a conservative Black Republican nominee, even though it would have been historic and we would have acknowledged the history inside of it, some of us would have felt no connection to her because our politics might have been so significantly different that she does not necessarily, you don't necessarily feel like that she represents you just by virtue of her package. Like I did not necessarily feel represented by Hillary Clinton just because she was a woman. So we have different perspectives on a lot of things. And as a result, it was wonderful that we were, had the potential of breaking the glass ceiling for just what that means for America, but I did not feel that she represented every woman in America just because she could have won, so I am with Sia in the sense that there is a dichotomy, a nuance that exists inside of it. I respect and appreciate and value the history and the weight inside of the moment. I acknowledge 100% that she's going to carry the weight of representing Black women all over the place. I 100% acknowledge that. But do I feel like every single Black woman sits inside of her as if she were the mother of the Black, the Black race? I wouldn't give it that, I'm not saying you said that, but for some people it's that big, I wouldn't give it that. Because Clarence Thomas most definitely does not represent Black men. So that's why I'm, like, that's just, I acknowledge there are nuances here.
Yeah, you're right. And that's where I was going. And Ton, I'll come to you. You know, I want to know in the Black community, can we make trades? Can we trade out Clarence Thomas, right? Can we put him up for somebody else? Like what's the rules here? You know what I'm saying? When you talked about last week, putting people on pedestals and all that, but that's a whole nother conversation. But Ton, I do want to ask you, as a professional in the legal aspect, that's what you do all day, every day. Can you speak on what this nomination means, perhaps in your arena, why this is so significant?
So the Constitution was ratified in 1789, and the court was created then. And the first court was in session in 1790. So you are looking at 232 years since the first court. And this is the first African-American woman. So of course, this is of great significance. In addition to that, you have the fact that this young lady, and I call her a young lady because she's only 51 years old, she has had a wide experience base, given the fact that she was in private practice, she was a federal public defender, she was on the United States Sentencing Commission, she was a U.S. district judge, and then she was a U.S. Court of Appeals judge, and now she is going to soon be a justice. So a great deal of her judicial philosophy, I tend to relate to that belief system. So I think it is a big deal. To piggyback on some of the things that both Sia and Albion said, while we have to make sure that we do not place this celebrity status on her and remember her humanity, at the same time, I know she feels the weight of this moment, and she feels the weight of representing her people and representing her people well. To your point about can we exchange, I'll just note this for you. We are responsible for Clarence Thomas being on that bench. If you read your history, and if you go back, the Democrats were in control of the Senate at the time. And it was, who I love dearly, our President Biden, who was the Senate Judiciary Chairperson at the time. And when Professor Anita Hill came forth, it was white males who were very liberal, like Teddy Kennedy and Biden and others, who pushed that to the side because Clarence Thomas gave the very famous speech of this is nothing but a lynching, a public lynching of a Black man. And it was the NAACP that came forth and supported Clarence Thomas. So we put him on that stand. So if we mad at somebody, go look in the mirror.
Yeah, and that's fair. That's fair, Todd. And yes, I know that sometimes we do push for change, but we can still ask for trades, can't we? I mean, look, if the deal don't work out, can we just
run them off, Kevin? Which ones you trading?
Who can we put? Can we get two other people in exchange for Clarence Thomas? I mean, I'm just asking. You know,
we knew his body of work before he was nominated. We knew what he stood for. You know, Senator Danforth from Missouri nominated him, and we knew his body of work when he was with AEOC. We knew his body of work. That's why there were so many who were against it. But again, sometimes our people, sometimes we can't look beyond color. And because we can't look beyond color, we don't sometimes look at the qualifications. We're looking at the qualification of Ketanji Brown Jackson, and we're seeing color too, but she's extremely qualified. And we're able to see all of that. But there have been moments in our histories where we have lapses. And that was one of the lapses that we had, unfortunately. And, you know, we got to own it, because if you don't own it, you can't grow from it. You can't learn from it. And so sometimes we got to make sure we always look at the qualification and the belief system and the judicial philosophy of that individual before we jump on that bandwagon, because it's not always the best thing for our community.
Yeah, and I respect that. And I also know that what we're saying here is that Black people supporting Black people essentially, no matter what, is nothing new. And it's not just limited to our race. So,
No, it's
I
not.
mean, you could go back to the most profile case. O.J. Simpson is the most profile case here, where you can look at the fact that it was clearly along racial lines in terms of how people viewed that case. And so, again, yes, I understand that. We put them up there. But if we did it, can we also ask for a trade? That was my question. But anyway, let me go back to Ray. Ray, let me ask you: Do you think this accomplishment, because it is historic, or do you? I don't know if, and maybe it's just me. I just want to ask the question: Do you think, though, that this nomination, Ketanji Brown Jackson, had off the heels of Kamala Harris, first vice president, first female Black vice president, off the heels of Barack Obama, do you feel that this one has the same notoriety and attention within our community? Is it as celebrated? I'm not so sure, but I want to ask you that question. What do you think about that?
Well, first I would say I don't think it has the same level of notoriety because people may not necessarily understand the importance of the court. So when it comes down,
but we in court all the time.
Yeah, but I hate to say
we don't understand court.
Our people may not
people see Todd every day. What you talking about? We don't know about court.
Well, it's the Ketanji Brown Jacksons of the world that helped to develop and actually interpret how the Constitution applies to people like us, and even down to the lower levels. And for her to be questioned in regards to her, her accomplishments and her competence and how significant she is. I believe, Tom, she clerked for Bayer. You already said that already. She clerked for the Supreme Court, been a public defender, appellate court, circuit court. The sister is just way beyond qualified. And for us, we don't necessarily have an acumen to understand the importance of the Supreme Court and what it really matters and how they judge and how they rule, I should say, in terms of how that impacts public policy. Now, we understand that judges are not supposed to legislate from the bench, but rather interpret the law. But in terms of who she is and what she's done, her body of work speaks for itself. The reason that it's important for me is, as a father raising 4 girls, and I got one girl that I'm trying to push toward, moving into law and politics. This to me is just like, icing on the cake. And I think it speaks volumes. Now, if you ask me as a cleric, I really believe this. This to me is, kind of scripture being fulfilled, Pastor Swan, in the sense of this. Now, I know this is eisegesis and the theologians can get upset with me and I don't really care. And that is, the first shall be last, but the last shall be first. And when you look at our society in America in terms of the impact upon African-American women and what they've had to experience, and to see this happen and take place at the highest court in the land, now, that to me, I believe heaven is talking on the heels of Kamala Harris, on the heels of, President Obama, all of that taking place. And then you see this happening. So like to me, it's a day of reckoning happening in America.
Yeah, Jay, what's your thoughts on all this, man?
Personally, I was excited, but as Alvin said, I really wish in that moment when they would ask those questions, especially about the pedophilia, that I could have been there and I could have answered like her big brother or her little brother, because even when it came down to the question when they asked, define the definition of a woman, bruh, like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? You having to do this. But the way she said, look, I said what I said and revert back to what I just said. I'm praying for the Holy Ghost to work on my mouth that way, because I would have said what I said, but I would put some 4 letters and some 5 letters and some 16 letters, because it's some words that have not even been created. See, I've already come up with agroneuticiousness. I would have came up with the word for the good gentleman from Kentucky, good gentleman from Tennessee, because here's my thing. That woman, as we have all said, was overly qualified. One of the, and I don't know, but I would dare say the most qualified person, not just woman, person, to sit there. You had these ignorant men question her about pedophilia. And if we be honest, let's go back into their closets and see what things they struggle with. But as Pastor Swan says, it's 2022. It's not for me to say. I was excited. I really enjoy politics, but I enjoy old school politics when the issues matter and not red and blue. Because as Alvin alluded to, there were times when you just had good people that were up for positions and you put them on the merits of who they were, not because they have a D behind their name or have an R behind their name or I behind their name. And then as soon as you say who you are, now you already dignified as something else. So I was excited, but honestly, I was really angry because I'm like, yo, y'all talking to my sister like she trash. Let me talk to your mama the same way. That I was like, Anton, I want to say, they say, hey, how do you feel about the mandatory citizen? Your mama. And I would put a word behind there that we can't say on the radio, even though I am the engineer and I could bleep it out. I want my witness to speak for itself and not to be a stumbling block for anybody else. The doors of the church are open.
The church say amen. And so if you're just tuning in, we're talking about the historic moment, Ketanji Brown Jackson being officially nominated to the Supreme Court of the United States, first female African-American to ever be appointed to the Supreme Court. This is a major moment. And just talking about really the aftermath behind that and what that really means for our nation, for our community, for our people. And so, Ton, I want to come back to you, man, because I know you said earlier, man, off air, there are lots of layers to this. It's not just the nomination, but it was some other stuff that you were paying close attention to as well in watching how this whole thing played out. So what stood out to you, man, in this whole process?
Okay, so there are a variety of stuff that stood out to me. Comparing her resume to the resume of, and I don't want to be political with it, but just the last three justices who had been nominated and confirmed, particularly the last one, Amy Coney Barrett, looking at her lack of a resume and how quickly they put her through, I think it was 8 days, that she went from nomination to confirmed. And they did that because they knew an election was coming up. And so they wanted to make sure they got one more in. But yet how that smoothly sailed through the Senate. And yet they treated this nominee and now confirmed person as an outcast, as the bottom of the shoe. I mean, the disrespect. We talked about it last week, the disrespect, and to be able to hold your tongue. But I'm gonna tell you the point, because I couldn't watch a lot of it. Can I just be transparent with y'all for a minute? I couldn't watch a lot of the hearings. I had to watch it in pieces because I just could not deal with the way they treated her. Because when I look at her, I look at my mom. I see my mom. You know, my mom was a strong single parent, Black female. And I see my mom. This is not someone who they would see as your typical, because some of the things that we don't talk about either is there's layers when it comes to classism and intra-racism. And when you are a darker skinned African-American, we deal with stuff that some of the lighter skinned African-Americans do not deal with. And so you have someone with ethnic features, you know, so I see my mom, you know, she got braids in her hair, you know, she got full of lips. And so I looked at her and I just couldn't deal with how they treated her. They just treated her horrifically. And so when the point that just took me over the edge, that I wanted to throw something at my TV, is when they were doing the votes. And our gentleman senator from South Carolina, Mr. Tim Scott, and I use that word loosely, Mr. When he said nay, I was done. Now, I know some people may say, well, why are you surprised? Or they may say, you know, because he's Black don't mean he should vote for her. The point that took me out was, you know, she's qualified, because she is way more qualified than the last three that you eagerly and overly with joy supported. So why different for her, someone who looks like you, who probably have shared experiences like you, and yet you are joining with your colleagues on your political side simply because maybe you want to keep your job, or maybe you just don't want to be an outcast in your state, in your party, and you have other Republicans, white Republicans, who supported her, and you said no. I was done then.
Well, you know
You
why
could
that
turn the
was,
TV off
though.
for me.
But Tanya, you know, that's exactly why that was, because one of the things that happens in politics, particularly when you're talking about this version of politics, that we also see in social dynamics on a regular basis, is Black people who avoid being associated with other Black people in order to get white affirmation, right? So in the reality is that he provides cover for those who did not want to vote for her just by virtue of the fact that she was a woman of color, because they can easily say, well, Tim's Black and he didn't vote for her. So we could take it away from this pseudo race issue that we all know was a factor inside of it, but we don't want to acknowledge that factor because that would be more problematic. So every time you have a Black person who does exactly what the white people do, it allows for white people to have cover where that is concerned. And it happens in the opposite as well. So, I mean, like, the reality is that for as long as Tim complains about things, I can't tell you how many times I have political arguments and social arguments with folks, and they tell me, Candace Owens, anything. Do not start a sentence with me with Candace Owens. Do not. You might as well say, I plan to shoot your children. Do not start a sentence with me with Candace Owens as some legitimacy to how it's not racist to feel A, B, C, or D, or to act A, B, C, or D. Very often we use each other as cover for certain kinds of things. And where race is concerned, Tim, there has been more than one time that Tim has been racial cover for racism.
But here's the problem with that. They look at him and they say behind closed doors and behind 100%. His back, come on, they 100%. Just like them. What we're gonna do is we're gonna smile in your face and we're gonna think that you are acceptable
whatever,
to
because
us.
because we're using you. And I just went through a professional experience where I was protecting a young Black woman who was being called a thief in an organization, specifically because Black people steal, found out about it from a white employee, and the organization went to protect the white man who had said it because he was in leadership, rather than acknowledging the issue. And it wasn't said about me, it was said about another woman. That little girl, she was a grown woman, but I say little girl because she did not understand what was going on behind the scenes. And instead, they were able to get that little girl to write a letter to say that my mentorship around her elevation as a woman of color in the professional world was racist. So the real racist inside of the company was me. Not the person who said Black people steal. I was the racist because I was talking to her about what it took as a woman of color to elevate to higher levels, the way in which we need to know our stuff, how we need to navigate some spaces, certain things we should be careful about doing. But she actually wrote a letter to harm me, instead of realizing that the reason that I was talking to you about these things is because I know what's being said about you behind your back. I know what's being talked about because there are folks who will leak it. They just don't want to stand for it. And all of those things were being leaked and they were bringing them to me. And I was handling the situation the best I could while we were working on getting rid of certain folks that were promoting this racism through the organization. But at the end of the day, it was a young Black woman who gave them the cover necessary to be able to say that we don't have to deal with that. We'll make you the problem instead. And it happens all the time.
Because they're our skin folks, don't mean they're our
don't
skin folks.
Make that, man, I had that written on this piece of paper right here. I said skin folk ain't kin folk, y'all. We will come for each other in a heartbeat.
In a minute.
Because we don't know. Because we do not understand what really happens behind the scenes to get some of these balls moving in the directions they move and how the status quo is often maintained. So like there's always somebody in there doing something they ain't got no business doing. But like, go ahead, Sia, because I could go all the way up on the top of my.
I was just going to tap in on that because it's happening on the state level as well. And so here's why my original thought, because I think the moment the parties and I mean, they had a whole block party in DC this past weekend, like celebration, yes. Deification and elevation simply based off identity, no. That's what I was saying at the beginning, because he is one of the same people that comes to mind that as soon as he speaks out, I don't want anyone saying that he speaks for all Black people. You know what I mean? So I think it cuts both ways. But the problem for me, I'm going to raise it up a little bit because I don't know his particular lived experience or that of those that are on the state level. But just in general terms, when you are in elected office or a pastor or a community leader, you have to have an identity outside of the position, or you will do any and everything that you can, even when it's wrong, in order to keep the position. And so that's why, I got some recognition for splitting with my party did not mean that I voted with the Republicans. It means that I will vote against the Democratic bill if it's wrong, right? And if that means I get in trouble with some folks, I have to answer to my creator before I have to answer to anybody else, right? And so it's this sense of, well, I don't have anything else other than this position, so I'm going to do everything that I can to stay in the position. That's where you see people getting parroted, getting played, getting put out there as a mascot for morals that are actually hurting our community. That's how that happens. And even when you put it in their face and say, well, they laughing at you, right? They can't reconcile it. They can't even deal with that, because then they would have to deal with the fact that they are empty and void, but for this position or title, instead of using it to actually do something in the position. And that is why we have to be clear when we are raising up our leaders that they have to be whole and healthy people before taking on these leadership roles.
Yeah, you're right. And again, I guess it goes back to, you have a lot of people who take cover, as you're all saying, that don't necessarily represent or reflect who we are, right? Mm-hmm. They don't speak for us. So Tom, Alvy, C, Ray, Jay, I'm gonna ask, but Tom, I'm gonna start with you. How do we let people know? Because people who are not Black, when they hear somebody Black speaking, they are assumed to think that they represent us, but in many cases they don't represent us. So how do we let people know, nah, that one ain't speaking for me, but this one can speak for me? How do we let people know, Tom?
Well, one of the things that we have to do is we have to be vocal. When we see things that are wrong, we have to speak out. Whatever platform, all of us have a sphere of influence. And so whatever platform you may have, whatever visibility you may have, you have to use that to make sure you're educating people on the merits of an issue or on the merits of a person who is being nominated for a position. But make sure you speak up, because if you don't speak up, to me, you're just as bad as someone who is pointing that person or pushing that person out there when you know that person is wrong. You got to speak up. And I'm going to tell you this, it takes the Holy Ghost and boldness to be able to do that sometimes, because you got people who you may be, let's say if you're in a political situation, you may have people who are in your political party who may look down on you, who may even try to get rid of you and run somebody against you. And you know what? I'm like, bring it on, because guess what? You ain't my Jesus. And so you didn't put me in this position. So guess what? Until he get ready for me to come up out of here, I'm here. And so that's the mindset that you have to have, particularly when you realize that you're doing what you were supposed to do and you're doing the right thing. But you can't be afraid. I can't stand no chicken people. I can't stand those scary people, y'all. You know me.
Word.
Chicken, you ring that chicken neck.
but see, this is in every arena, right? And Ray, I'm gonna come to you because there's some Black preachers that don't speak for me, don't speak for you either, right? So So how do we let people know who ain't preachers and ain't pastors? Yo, that one over there, that one don't, he or she don't they don't rock with me. They don't speak for me. How do we, because there's also the veil, Bishop. You know how it is. We try to, but some people just don't speak for me, right? So how do we let people know that?
Answer. Damn, I'm surprised he didn't turn his camera off. Because come on, y'all. We're gonna expose this. I'm surprised he didn't turn that camera off because you're making that seat hot now. You just made his seat hot.
Come on, Bishop. How do we make it known?
Well, number one, you Tom want me to go here today, so I'll go here a little bit. So some of it, the Bible says that you have to mark them. And so when it comes to people that have a continuation of unrepentant, behavior where they will not change and it continues on for generation, there has to be someone who's willing to point the finger that actually removes it from being something that's personal. And I think that's what a lot of times what we do. We make too many things personal rather than lifting up a standard. And one of the things that you and I do when it comes to our profession, we always remind people, we did not write this. These are not our words. We're only responsible for communicating it as it is contextually and then communicating its truth. So we're not responsible for being the author. All of us work for the author. And I like what Sia had to say, because whether it's politics, whether you're in law, whether you're working for the police department, education, whatever sphere of influence you're in, you got to recognize the one that sent you. And I think that a lot of times what Sia had to say is people will become beholden to all these different pocketed groups along the place. And as soon as they flip a switch on you, just like they say, if they put you up, they can put you down. But if you are sent by heaven to a particular assignment in an area, then you're responsible to God first. And I think that we lose a consciousness in regards to that. As it relates to our profession, Pastor Swan, we got a lot of marking to do. That's all I'll say about that in regards to, how some of our brethren carry themselves. And then at the end of the day, as people are educated about what the standard is, and I think that's across the board, in our profession, people will walk. They will walk with their purse strings, they'll walk with their service, and they will lead once they are educated enough. And it requires for people like us to be comfortable enough in our own skin to be able to communicate that truth. Like Sia just said, if I got to vote against my party because the cause is righteous, then I'm with God all day. Now, the wonderful thing about that is God promises to back her 100 out of 100 times if she's in alignment with him. So with us, I think to answer the question, it's about educating people about the standard. This is what the standard is. This is what's required. Here is how this is supposed to operate and how this is supposed to work. And when we miss it, we can't, have moments where all of a sudden we go behind. I got to cut my camera off because I'm going to get in trouble right here. We go behind that veil. That's my boy. I got to cover you on that right there. So we just going to kind of hush that underneath the rug. No, you wrong.
Call that joker out.
Yeah. Hey, Jason. Listen, man, turn your camera back on, man. See, I want to talk to you, Jay, because, everybody up here, they're so eloquent in speech, man. And I think I could talk to you plain because Bishop is eloquent and Sia and Ton and legal and Alvy, she speaks well, because she got to talk with people all day. Hey, Jay, there used to be a term in the Black community, man. This is what I see, Tim Scott not voting for her. There used to be a term in the Black community called crabs in the barrel, man. And I don't know if you remember, you were old enough and Sia old enough maybe to remember that term. Crabs in the barrel simply is when you see when a crab sees one crab trying to get out the barrel, all the other crabs pull it back down, right? And that still exists in our community. It don't matter if you're in office, political office, you're in the legal system, you're a pastor. There are certain Black people that don't like to see other Black people come up. And that's just a reality. And still in 2022 in our community, Jay, right? And you probably in your profession, have seen where you come up and you got others hating on you too. Because you come up, you got degree, you're in a good situation, you doing media stuff now, you want to come up. Man, how do we deal with this, man? Let's talk about this for the last, this whole crabs in the barrel mentality, man. And sometimes we have it.
Listen, I'm so grateful that one of my big brothers is Anton Bell, and he gave me permission to say your mama. I have been walking around saying your mama, and I'm gonna shank you for the last 2-3 weeks. But even before then, Swan, what you said, there's no secret. I work at a predominantly a white church. I'm the first person of color on the executive team, and as soon as I got that job, a lot of my homeboys were like, "Oh, you can't relate to us no more. Oh, you uppity now, or you got an account so you can do different things." Sir, I have been working hard my whole life, from my childhood to my adulthood, and it's time for me to see the fruit of my labor. I should not be 38 years old still making $150 for playing for 17 services. I shouldn't be. When somebody say, "Hey, I need you to come do something," okay, $1,500. Oh, that's too much. When I leave my house, I'm leaving my babies. I'm leaving my wife. My daddy told me if it don't make sense, you should not do it. When you leave your house and when you come back, you're not better for it financially, physically, and emotionally, you might as well stay home and keep doing the same thing you're doing for free. So for me, the crab in the bucket mentality, I've been wrestling with it for the last 3 to 5 years. I'm really within the last 2 years. But for me, I don't care. Like, people joke with me and say, "Hey, you don't come on the other side of Mercury anymore. You stay in Yorktown, Williamsburg area." Yes, I do. Why? Because I have found a way to leverage my influence and leverage what I do and my know-how. Not to say I won't come back down to downtown to news, because Swan, you and Ray both know, if y'all see the same thing. If y'all need me, I'm there. I've told Sia on numerous occasions, "Hey, you need me to go knock on doors? Call your brother. I may not walk. I'm gonna get the little scooter to push me down there, but I'll be there. Swan, if you need me, come do a service for you." And I don't ever, and y'all correct me, I never say, "Hey, pay me X number of dollars," because of the level of respect we have. However, we do have some of the other people that don't have that level of respect. And for me, I'm 38 years old, multiple properties, multiple vehicles, multiple streams of income. Hey, listen, call me what you want to call me. At the end of the day, I'm going to say, "Yo, mama," because I don't care no more. Like Swan just said, I don't have all these big words and exegesis and intergesis and middle Jesus and mitigate and litigate. I don't have time for all that. Hey, can you come? No. You think you're better than us? Yes, I am better than you. The Bible says, just some of you were like Paul. I'm not. When you become new, when you become in Christ, you get new. Like, I know I'm butchering this scripture, but I'm fine with it, because here, at the end of the day, I don't have time for y'all people. I don't have time to please y'all, because guess what? At the end of the day, Dominion is calling me. These other places are calling me, and I have to render payment. Render to Caesar what is Caesar. I am Caesar. Give me my money. I don't care about this. Mind your net. That's why Swan asked me, because, "Ray, you can't say this. Swan, you can't say this." Anton will say it, and Sia and Alvin will say it. For me being on the professional side and in the religious side, I'm on that line. I can kind of say what I want to say because I'm not in the pulpit. But guess what? Some of y'all don't know this. I used to preach, and I'm getting that itch back. I'm coming back to the pulpit to say there's some hoes in this house. There's some swindlers in this house. But
all right, Jay, we appreciate you, bro.
Hey,
we might give you time off for 2 weeks, man.
Hey, you asked me, so I'm gonna tell you.
I appreciate that. And look, if you just tuned it in, we started with Ketanji Brown Jackson. I don't know where we done landed now. We just have a conversation. But Sia, I do want to come back to you, yes, because while we celebrate her nomination and this whole Black community thing, we know that there's some in the community that ain't, closest to her, that really ain't happy about it, right? And we know also that some of this stuff is very political, right? And so one of the things that Ton said, I want to ask you, he was very upset about the hearings and just how they came at her, right? And for the purposes of radio, just for radio, some people would argue, well, that's what happens on the other side too, when there's a confirmation on the other side, right? So how do you respond to that, where there's a grilling, no matter who's nominated, that the other party is going to try to discredit the nominee for the Supreme Court?
So, yes, the process is messy. The process is ugly on both sides, just like Alvian had covered. The polarization is crazy. But what I think was different here is the receipts that she came with. Think about Kavanaugh, think about Barrett. Like they tried to attack them on things that were there on the record. Sexual assault allegations, lack of a resume, lack of experience. So it was ugly, but I do think that some of the folks that were coming at them had legitimate complaints, whether they went about it in a nice way or not. They had legitimate things that they wanted to talk about. When you look at her resume, you can tell if you investigate any of those statements that they were making, they were twisting her words out of context. They weren't saying the whole thing. Like when they were saying she was soft on crime, she was going by, again, the statutes that were put in place by that very own body, or they were just flat out lying. And so that, I think, was what was so disgusting about it. It wasn't that they were just being mean. They were lying about her work, lying about her character. And if you listened to, I think it is important, if you did watch, to listen to everyone, because Durbin, the chair of the committee, would go back and fact check and actually, that didn't happen. Or actually, I mean, if you have 63,000 pages worth of stuff and what they're saying said happened is not anywhere in it, like nobody can prove that it actually happened, they're grasping at straws. But there were significant and consistent themes that I think were consistent. We're going to trash trans people. We're going to try and make the Democrats out to be pedophiles, even though, like was mentioned, the underage sex scandals that are actually happening right now are with Republican members. And we're going to try and make it sure that, they're soft on crime, especially while Black communities are experiencing increased levels of murders and gun violence. These are all dog whistles. So this was not about attacking someone's record or disagreeing with them. This was a concerted effort to undermine her and her politics, Black people's politics. And so I think it connects to, in closing, I think it connects to what we were just talking about. How do we let other people know that these certain people don't speak for me? I was sitting in a committee meeting where a member was presenting his bill. And because he had 3 Black people that were supporting his bill, he said, and I've got the Black caucus's support. And you knew what he was trying to do. He was trying to say, hey, other Black people, vote for this because some Black people did. And I called him out on it. And I could have gotten in trouble for calling him out on it, but it was important. And if he ever does it again, I can now say, remember that time I called you out on it and you're still doing it? Now I can say it's conscious. And so it's that kind of, we have to call it out. But as one of my favorite hymns says, let my work speak for me. May my work speak for me. Let me speak for me. It is underlying racism to go to other Black people and what they're saying to justify your feelings about Black people and not listen to all of us as we are not a monolith. So I think that's a learning point for our non-Black friends as well.
Kevin.
Yeah, you go ahead, Tom.
There, CM brought up a point when they were trying to really say that she sympathized with child pedophilia. It was funny. Marsha Blackburn, who is the Tennessee senator, she went after her in so many different ways, but particularly in that area as well. But in Tennessee right now, they have a bill that's out there that basically says common law marriage should be allowed no matter the age.
The age.
No matter the age. So if you are 12 or 13, according to that bill, the way it is written, you can get married in common law marriage in Tennessee. Yet you're going to call this woman a supporter of child pedophilia? See, that's the kind of stuff that we don't talk about. And no one is talking about it that's on the GOP side. No one. But you want to still go after her for stuff like that. It's that kind of stuff.
So, John, I ask you that same question just for the purposes of radio, because we know we got both sides that listen to our show, right? So what do you say to those who may be, Republican, and they say, well, when Amy Coney Barrett was nominated, the Dems went after her hard and much longer, even though the whole process was 8 days, but still they tried to bury her. And that's just a part of the process. What's the big deal about how the Republicans went after Ketanji Brown? Jackson.
Because they didn't go after her identity. See, they went after the identity of Ketanji Brown Jackson. They try to basically call her a child pedophile because I'm connecting you to that. They try to make her talk about trans issues, but basically making her define what a woman is. Well, she's a woman. You don't think she knows what a woman is? But they were going to the core of who she was, or trying to go to the core of who she was and her identity. And they were trying to belittle her as a person, as a human being. They didn't belittle Amy Barrett Coney. What they did is they pointed out the fact, oh, girl ain't done nothing. I mean, if we're going, I'm gonna have a Jason moment. She's not accomplished. She's not experienced. She's only privileged. She's entitled. She has been entitled her entire life. She's clerked, yes, but then outside of clerking, she's never tried a case, ever, never litigated a case. She's never done a criminal case. She was in private practice, I believe, a couple of years, and those cases were like contract type, corporation type cases, and that was it. She's never been on the district court. She was on the Court of Appeals court, I believe it was a couple of years, and 2 or 3 years, and that was it. That was it. So she's not accomplished. So when you're trying to compare the two, yeah, they may have gone after her, but they went after her based on her resume, not based on who she is as a person, to make people look at you and say, wow, that was very personal. The way you came for that person, that was very personal, maybe even a little on the racist side, maybe a lot on the racist side. And that's the problem we have, or at least I have.
And I mean, we know sisters getting personal attacks is nothing new, right? Y'all deal with this all day, every day, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so kind of put a bow on the show for us here in terms of, in spite of those personal attacks, now she's nominated, it's official, all of that part of the process is over. What ultimately do you think this means for sisters? Do you think sisters will look at her in the same way sisters look at Kamala in terms of respect? We've arrived, we're taking a step. What do you think? How do you think sisters will generally feel about this nomination?
Well, first, let me just say that I love Black women because we save America from itself often. Okay, so I would just like to drop the name Roy Moore inside of this just for a second. Okay, so we won't stay there too long, but I find it very rich that we want to talk about pedophilia, from a political standpoint, when we had senators publicly saying that it's better to be able to choose a pedophile than a Democrat. Okay, just for the record, and any of us who know politics know exactly what I'm talking about in Alabama. Okay, so I find that really rich that we're even talking about pedophilia. We're in this context, but from a woman of color standpoint, what does this represent for us? What does this mean for us? What I would say is that we will not all rest inside of any single person, and I think that it's healthy that we don't. You know, like it is important for us to be able to maintain individuality as a culture while understanding a collective experience, that we don't have to lose ourselves individually to be able to celebrate ourselves collectively. We will have respect when we stand for what's right, no matter who it is and where it is. That's what matters most. That's how we come out of the politics and the nonsense. That's how we add character to our content, is that we have to be willing to have the courage to do what's right, no matter who is involved inside of the situation. Don't let people drag you to any corner. You don't have to stand with every woman just because she's a woman. You don't have to stand with every Black person because they're Black. Nobody asked white people to speak on behalf of every white person. Where's your leader? Like you're on planet Mars. You know, like we are individuals inside of this, but we do share a collective American experience. So what I would say is that we have a responsibility as people to reclaim both the individuality while carrying the consciousness of the collective, and understand that we are in this thing together, but we all own our part inside of it. We must reclaim individual character and have the courage to be able to stand up in order to be able to change the trajectory of this for a nation, because we are often the ones that are saving it.
Yeah, that's good, Alvin. And I see we got about 45 seconds. You can put a bow on the show for us.
I am celebrating the moment. I'm celebrating the accomplishment. I'm celebrating this moment where there were allies who stepped up to make it possible and kept their word with the nomination. We're not going to give them too many cookies, but those 3 votes that got us over in order to make this possible. I am overjoyed, but I'm also recommitted to the work that we will have all of the first out of the way so that we can just be in these spaces doing the work at all of the tables where voices are being heard and decisions are being made. So I'm just excited to continue the work. And I think I can speak for all of us on that.
Yeah, that's good. So congratulations, Ketanji Brown Jackson, on the nomination. First African-American female nominated to the Supreme Court of the land. And Ton, you said Supreme Court is how old?
232 years since the first court. And by the way, she's confirmed now. So she's not just nominated, she's confirmed.
Yes. So she in there, for those who don't know.
Yes.
She in there now, right?
She is confirmed. Yes.
So, hope you enjoyed the show today. We got to run. Until next time, be blessed and be a blessing to someone else. This is Smooth 88.1 WHOV, iHeartRadio, right here, y'all. Facebook Live.